Shalom, shalom. So the title of the video for today is to build yourself up, because Christ and the Most High is going to dwell in us, right? Because don't you know that Christ is in you, right? But we have to remember that how Christ dwells in us, right? Remember that we water ourselves with the Word, right? We water and plant it, right? And the Most High gives the increase, right? But we gotta make sure that the seed or the foundation that we are planting and watering is the correct one, right? This is the book of First Corinthians chapter 3 and verse 11. For other foundation can no man lay than that is laid, which is Yahushua, right? We have to meditate on Yahushua's words, right? Because that's going to be the one that will enable us or allow us to maintain that standing, right? Because there will come a time when there will come a time when sound doctrine will not be heard, or people will close their ears to sound doctrine, right? Therefore we got to be prepared for that, right? The Most High is going to deliver his what strong delusions, right? Because the world wants uh, to fulfill their own lust, right? uh, Doctrines of man, traditions of man, right? But our doctrine is the doctrine of Christ, right? The doctrine of Christ is the doctrine of the Most High, right? He didn't come to his own doctrine, but the one who sent Yahweh Shai, right? So we gotta always make sure that foundation or that seed is getting watered properly, right? So yeah, let's give an example of the of one of Christ's words. One of my favorite, I think. This is the book of Matthew, chapter 5, and verse 37. But let your communication be yes, yes, nay, nay, or no, no. For whatsoever is more than these cometh of evil. Right? So, one thing to process knowledge is by asking questions, right? Some questions can be answered by a yes, 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 or no, and no, right? So if a doctrine comes out, you gotta ask the right questions, right? Some questions can be answered by a yes or no, right? So this is one of Christ's words that we have to always um, embrace, right? And use, right? Because an example, one brother asked me if how many gods do I worship, right? So I'm not good at answering that, but I said right now there's a lot, because ye are gods, right? Israelites are God. Christ is a God or an authority or a power. Most High God is a authority, power. Solomon is an authority, power, right? So a lot, right? But if he asks me a question, right? If he asks me a if he asks me a question of uh, how many Most High gods do I have, right? I will say just one, right? So it's better to um, isolate the questioning, right? Because that's how you get deep in this thing, right? We don't want to be simple minded, right? We want to get down into business, right? And understand each of the doctrines that comes out, right? This is the book of Matthew, chapter 7, verse 24. Therefore, whosoever heareth the sayings of mine and doeth them, I repeat, whosoever heareth, I repeat, heareth, I repeat, hear it, these sayings of mine, and doeth them, I repeat, and doeth them, I will liken him unto a what? A wise man, to a wise man, which built his house upon a rock, right? Because that rock is the foundation, or that good ground, or that solid ground we may lay our different interpretations on, or different biblical interpretations on, right? Because there will come a time where the Most High will test that, right? For we are what? God's buildings, right? Let's go back there again. 1 Corinthians 7:24. First Corinthians chapter 3 and verse 11, for other foundation can no man lay than that is laid, which is Yahweh Hamashiach. Verse 12, now if any man build upon this foundation, gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, stubble, every man's work shall be what? Made manifest. It will come out, or it will what? It will show, right? Continuing, for the day shall continue, for the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by what? Fire, right? And the fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is, right? So we gotta always be testing this belief, this doctrine, right? We need to make sure that it's aligned from that foundation, which is Christ, right? It has to be aligned with Christ's words, right? Because if you put something wrong there, right, it's what going to what? It's going to what? Matthew. Let's go back to verse 24 again. Therefore, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine and what doeth them, I read that again, and doeth them, I will liken him unto a what? A wise man. A wise man which built his rock upon a house, right? We build our house upon a rock because Christ is that rock or foundation. And the rain, verse 25, and the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it what? It fell not. I repeat, it fell not. I repeat, it fell not. Continuing, for it was founded upon a rock, because that rock is very strong, right? So whatever calamity or testing, trial, right, it it fell not. Verse 26, and everyone that hear the sayings of mine, and again doeth them not, I repeat, doeth them not, shall be likened unto a what? A foolish man, which built his house upon the sand. A sand is not a good solid ground. So anything that you put there when calamities comes, it's going to fall. Verse 27, and the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it what? It fell. I repeat, it fell, right? I repeat, it fell, right? And the great, and great was the fall of it. I repeat, and great was the fall of it, right? It's going to, you know, we don't want that to happen, right? So each piece, each block, whether whatever that may be, a practice, a belief, a doctrine, once we insert that on our building, for we are what? God's building, we have to make sure that fits the right um, puzzle. Here, 1 Corinthians chapter 3 and verse 9, for we are laborers, right? We work for that together with God. Ye are Yahweh's husbandry, ye are Yahweh's building, right? You gotta build, right? So you gotta make sure that the grounds, the good ground that you're building is from Christ, right? Because if it's not Christ, if you don't do it them, if you just hear them, you will what? Fall, right? So gotta be careful with what we build, right? So that's our another meditation for today. So the important part really is the foundation part, but you just gotta read Christ's words and accept them, right? Christianity is finished because they don't follow Christ, not following the commandments of Christ. Let's go to, I think, Luke 10. This is the book of Luke chapter 10 verse 25. This verse are not accepted by Christians, right? Because even if you are a adulterer or a thief actively doing it, you can still go to heaven. That's their position, right? Which is a false doctrine. Luke chapter 10 verse 25. And behold, a certain lawyer stood up and tempted him, saying, Master, what shall I do to inherit life? Excuse me. What shall I do to inherit eternal life? Right? Eternal life or the kingdom of heaven is the same thing, right? He said unto him, What is written in the law? How readest thou? And he answering said, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy soul, with all thy strength, all thy might, and thy neighbor as thyself. Verse 28, And he said unto him, Thou hast answered right, this do, and thou shalt live. But he, willing to justify himself to Jesus, and who is my neighbor? And Christ answering, a certain man went down. Wait, I missed this point, Salakia. Or excuse me. Luke 10:26. Christ said, What? He said unto him, What is written in the law? How readest thou? Right? Because to keep the commandments is what? Right? Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul. Right? This is a precept from that verse, right? Because the Old Testament still stand. Because Christ didn't what? Didn't come to destroy the law, right? But to fulfill, right? He did the law. He completed it, right? But complete doesn't mean destroyed. So those are different words, right? So Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verse 5. And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart and all thy soul and all thy might, right? Is there any more? And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine what? Heart, right? Thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, right? So we still have to really do the commandments, right? First John 3 and 5. Oh no. This is the book of First John chapter 5 and verse 3. For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments. Again, we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not grievous, right? So that's our foundation, which is Christ, right? And we gotta do a lot of reading about Christ's word, because he is that foundation, right? We may be able to walk in this thing properly and righteously, right? There will be a lot of ups and downs, right? But a righteous man standeth even when he is brought down, right? At the end of the day, all praise to the Most High, Yahweh, Hashem, Yahweh tomorrow for this daily meditations, right? You gotta be always prepared for any kind of temptations, right? Always be knowledgeable, always gain wisdom, and have understanding. Wara, have a nice evening.